Join me in welcoming Todd Gross. Hey, Todd, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Steve. Glad to be here.
So glad to have you here with us. First off, before we talk about your book, tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the book.
Okay, well, 30 plus years in the consulting field. Before that was a turnaround CEO and did M&A work for a Dutch conglomerate in the U.S. Have three daughters and live in Bloomington, Indiana, a nice college town. Just won the national championship after years and years of getting beat up. So all that was great.
I love it. Let's see, Bloomington is IU, right?
Correct.
All right, just wanted to make sure that I still knew my Indiana geography. That's cool. Yeah, I actually went to high school 3 of the 4 years in Indiana, northern Indiana, but yeah. So
Yeah.
cool. So your book is called Who Decides? Transform How Decisions Are Made in Your Organization.
Yes.
Tell us first a little bit about what inspired you to do that and make that book.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I did have been consulting for about 30 years, and you look for common themes and you take very complex issues and say, what, when you boil it down, what's the simple root cause? And, we did a lot of work around accountability and ownership and strategic planning. And as we work through these things, there's a repetitive theme that typically just keeps jumping in. It might manifest in several different directions, but it's typically comes down to, are the right leaders making the right decisions at the right level within the organization? And organizations generally don't have a good language to talk about that, and they don't teach it. So this book was to kind of bring it to the forefront and say, here's an underlying issue that exists in almost every organization that we work with. And here's some really good how-to actionable ways to have a conversation about it, train it, develop it in organizations.
So for people who don't know, maybe their organization is doing it, but they don't know it is, what's the typical way that organizations make decisions and why doesn't that work?
Well, one of the most common problems we run into is often when an organization is growing or a leader is growing at a rapid pace, as they move to the next level in the organization, they take their prior level of decision making with them. And they don't transition how they make decisions as they move up the ladder or as the organization scales and grows. And that old way of making decisions at a lower level or a smaller organization becomes a huge bottleneck for getting decisions made rapidly and keeping the organization or the individual moving forward. So this kind of helps break down and get people thinking about, as I move up or as my organization grows, how should my decision-making process change as my role changes?
How should my decision-making process change, even though most people it doesn't? How should it change?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we see is we look at it as on a volume and severity perspective. Lower in the organization, you're making high volume decisions, but there's not a whole lot of severity to it. As a frontline customer service position, I may make 100 decisions a day, but the organization isn't going to materially change based upon one of those decisions. As I get to the top of the organization, I make far fewer decisions, but the severity can instantly change careers, lives, the outcome of the business, etc. And what we often encounter is people try to maintain the same volume as the severity goes up and they're moving up an organization. And that's just not, it's not maintainable. People have a bandwidth and you can't maintain both volume and severity. So how do we push those decisions? How do we teach not what decisions to make, but how do we think about decisions? How should my people process this. And those are transferable skills. Just a lot of organizations don't focus on it.
What, since you said a lot of organizations don't focus on it, what are the things that they are focusing on that really end up pulling them way off track?
Yeah, so most people, as they move up the ladder in the organization, they got there because of their contribution and their ability to get things done. So when they get to the top levels of the organization, and pressure comes on, or there's a big time of change or anything, they go back to those same skills that made them successful in the past, which means I can do it, I can make the change, I can make the decision. And then they tend to overwhelm themselves and they become the bottleneck in being able to get things executed, rather than transitioning and saying, I now need to work through others. I need to get others to execute this. I need to get others to make these decisions and think about them in common ways. And one of the things that we talk about in the book is setting up decision barometers. And these are kind of the guardrails around it, right? Is, yeah, you can make your own decisions, but they got to kind of fall within these barometers. And those can be things like values, how we prioritize customer versus organization versus team versus self, things like that. And you establish those, so at least I know the decisions they're making are falling within set standards that aren't really negotiable for the company.
What are the parts of that skill that the person has that's the reason why you wanted them that manager, that they need to learn to identify is the thing they need to take ownership over and keep doing versus passing off to somebody else?
Yeah, one of the things that was probably the driving concept behind starting the book was a theory I call the 5 levels of decision making. And most people don't think about decisions in that way. They think about it as am I going to make it or are you going to make it, right? They don't think about the decision falling in different categories. And it starts at a very base level of, I hired you, this is in your bandwidth, you make the decision, and you don't even have to inform me. You can if you want to, but no big deal. The next level above that is still your decision, but it's something I need to know. So please keep me in the loop. But that kind of happens post decision making. The next 2 levels are where collaboration and contribution happen. And the next level is collaboration. It's still your decision, but we need to talk about it in advance. So the discussion is now happening pre-decision, but at the end of the day, it's still your decision. The next level is contribution. I want your input on it, still pre-decision making. But at the end of the day, I'm going to make the decision. And the very top level is I own it, which means this is my chair, it belongs. And that becomes a really good teaching tool. And I've had CEOs and leaders keep this graphic on whiteboards in their office as a teaching mechanism, is to go through folks and teaching them not how to make each decision, but how do we think about decision making here? What level do you think this is? In essence, what you're doing is you're training people not only what decision is yours and what decision is mine, but where should the communication around that decision happen? And when you repetitively use models like that, then people start learning what decisions they should be making, what decisions you should be making, and where we should be collaborating on these decisions.
I absolutely love that. And you've got a couple of pictures that really outline that for people in the book.
Yeah, I believe strongly that people do really well with models in a common language. So a lot of the book, there are models in there that folks can take and use in their business And it just helps convey visually what it is we're talking about. And also just to build a common language around it, right? One of the things that, going back to that 5 levels, is having the conversation. What level do you think this is? And people aren't going to materially change after one conversation, right? It's going to be a series of conversations using that model where you're now teaching people decisions with these characteristics belong in this bucket. Decisions with these characteristics belong in this bucket. So it's a model you use just to teach your folks where decisions should be made.
I love that. So, totally unfair question that I always ask authors, and this can be just for today. No, I'm not going to ask you which of your kids is your favorite, but what is your favorite part of the book?
Which child do I like better, right?
Mhm.
I think it would have to be the 5 levels of decision making, and the reason that that's my favorite part of the book has a lot to do with what I do. So I'm in coaching executives on almost a daily basis, and when you see a concept hit somebody and you get that aha moment, and you figure out, hey, this is going to make a difference in how they do this going forward, that's just rewarding. And so I would say that piece of it, there's nothing in here that's wildly complex and you have to have a master's degree in decision making to figure it out, right? There is behavioral science and there is psychology in the book. That's not the point of it. It's how can we make this simple so that people can use it in the organization. And there's nothing probably more rewarding than to see that really simple aha moment that says, hey, I can take this and I can put it to work.
Absolutely. So, what can a person who reads the book and then needs your help, what are the next things you can do with it?
Well, I think there's a lot of, like I said, models, takeaways. Each chapter kind of summarizes with, here are the things you can do with this. Here are the key points to take out of it. Here are the things to reflect on. So you can literally take the tools that were outlined in the book and put them to work in your business almost instantaneously. But the real piece of it is, how do I get the entire team, right? In organizations, how do we get the entire team on board with this, et cetera? And we do come into a lot of organizations and teach the concepts that are in this book, and just bring it to life, right? So that is always an option for folks that are out there. You can go from a self-implementation and just follow what the book says, or you can go as deep as bringing us in and getting our help in getting the concepts implemented.
And if somebody wants to work with you, where would they go? What's your URL?
Yeah. Best place to start is, we have 2 sites that I direct people to. One is mpo-solution.com. And that's also brings in a lot of the tools and stuff we use. And then my company site, I'm going to spell this because it's ingeniousa.com, but it's NGENIOUSA.com.
I love that. Well, before I let you go, give us some words of advice, words of encouragement of like something somebody could do. Get your book. That's number 1. But then number 2 is something they could do right now in their organization that could really help them out.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest things to do is to just simply stop and take a look at what I call the choke point in the organization. One of the questions I ask and I observe when we go into an organization is, where's the level in the organization where everything stops waiting on somebody to make a decision? Because up at the top of the organization, you have all the strategy and the plans that we have to do. And below that, you have all the people that have to execute on those plans. And the choke point between that, and I envision it as an hourglass, is wherever the decision making for that lies. And you can usually look at an organization and say, where is that choke point? And when you identify where a bottleneck lies, now you can start solving to open that bottleneck up. But if you don't first stop and take a look at where that bottleneck is, what level it exists at, etc., you'll keep solving symptoms and not the problem. So if I was in an organization today, and anybody who's in one, if you really step back and take a look at it, you'll be able to identify, yeah, things get stuck here. And when you can identify that, then you can start figuring out ways to open that choke point up.
I absolutely love that. Well, the book is called Who Decides? Transform How Decisions Are Made in Your Organization. It's by Todd Gross. It is actually available in ebook form today for you for free. Hope everybody will get it. Todd, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today.
Thank you, Steve.